Happy Tuesday, legends. We've got a fun little video here. Just wanted to mention that tomorrow in the buy, hold, risk, sell, it's going to be heavily featuring all of the origin players that we likely own in our sides, and if they are a hold or a sell. That's going to be a lot of that video, and that's going to be a lot of the questions I'll be getting this week, so hang out for that one. In this one, we're actually going to focus on obviously this week and the next couple of rounds, but as I said in the previous video, a couple of the videos in the back end of last week, my trades video, was that I had one eye on round 16. And I want to focus on that a little bit because once round 13 is done, which is obviously going to be a lot of what the next couple of days videos are going to be around getting that really good round 13. But in this one, I wanted to focus on following that round 13. Once a lot of these teams have had a buy, are they a purchase in round 14? Because you see here, all of the teams down to the Knights there have at least had one buy done now. So when I'm speaking about all of these teams from Tigers all the way down, they've had one, and then we're going to go through and show which one of these teams might be a good purchase for you across this buy period from round 14. So the Tigers we're going to kick it off with. They have a buy next week, and they've already had one at the start of the year. We then have to wait all the way until round 26 for the Tigers to have their third and final buy. So that's great news. If you're looking at any of those players, and we obviously spoke about Samuel Afinu, there's potential for guys like Alex Twal to be an option, who covers everything from round 14 all the way through to round 20, the really important buy rounds there. That's a long period of time, 7 rounds there, where you can get someone without a buy at all. Whereas you look at some of these other teams, even someone with a really good buy schedule like the Dolphins, they obviously play in round 13, different to that of the Tigers, which is very helpful, but then they're out in round 14 and also 18 in that time. So that's round 18 is when they finish their whole 3 buys. But Tigers, they don't miss any games in that period. And what we've seen, even in these standalone bye weeks, this one, for example, for myself, with having 3 Knights players and then having Fuller, it's just the same as having 4 Knights players or 3 Knights players and a red dot, a concussion week, guy out that week. And that can easily happen if you're sitting there with 3 Dolphins, or you're sitting there with 3 or 4 Bulldogs players for their standalone buy in round 15. That can still be a difficult week for you in setting up your squad. So that's where purchasing Tigers players in round 14, if they suit your plans, like if you think that they can be a mid-range guy that scores fairly well, makes you some cash over this period, that'll be worth it. If they're a cash cow that would do the same thing, that would score well enough, somewhere around that 40 mark, I think you'd be looking for at this stage, because you don't want to be really having them as a 30 scorer in standalone weeks like 15 or even a 17 when there's less relevant teams on the buy. In an 18, you don't really want that score either. So I think you want mid-range that can score 40 plus, or you're looking for a potential keeper or close to it, maybe a 16th, 17th, 15th type of scorer in your squad in the back end rounds, because that's something you want to look at as well. Once we get through the buy rounds in round 20, it's just standalone weeks from round 21 all the way through to round 27. So you do want someone that you can have in your starting 17 across those weeks. So they're the 2 options. Mid-range is going to score 40 plus. Again, if you needed to play them in those standalone weeks as like your 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th kind of man, then that is fine. If they're going to play the rest of the year, their job is fairly safe in that scenario, or they're a keeper. So have a look at that with Tigers players. They have the best run following round 13 there for sure. The team with the second best run, in my opinion, is going to be the Titans. So as we said, they've done one earlier. The second one will be done in round 13, and their third and final will be there in round 17. In round 17, you have the Titans, you have the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs are a fairly irrelevant fantasy team right now. And then you have the Eels. So potentially 1 or 2 that you might have on the buy in round 17. And even if it is Tolu Kola, are you going to want to hold him when he goes back to centre? Probably not, right? So it's likely to be just Garrick. Maybe you, unlikely, but still holding Waddell or something in that time. But if it's just Garrick, most of us are going to end up with Garrick in our sides. We had Jolliffe, a lot of us, and now we don't, right? So that removes that one. There's potential now that a lot of us will end up picking up Fafita. So let's say that's number 2, right? And if Rabbitohs are fairly irrelevant, then, that's great. Like, it doesn't hurt us at all in round 17. So that's where the Titans become really important, and obviously the Eagles as well. We'll get to them a little bit later because they have a bye later on in the year in round 22. But the Titans are done outside of round 17. So the Tigers and the Titans, the two Ts, are very, very important across this period. If you can get a keeper, then that's awesome. We do have to mention, obviously, Fafita, if we are going for him, there's a decent chance that he could come in for round 16 and 19. But they've already got Piakura ahead of him in the pecking order right now in this squad. Billy said he's not happy with the standards. He doesn't meet the Queensland Maroons standards at the moment. So maybe he doesn't get picked. And if that's the case, then Fafita will be in everyone's side come round 14 or beyond from there, right? So that's something to think about. And there's potentially other players that you might want in your side as well. Once we get some players back, obviously guys like Brimson will come back eventually and could be a solid option. But coming back from that groin injury, how's that going to affect him? But yeah, they're the two really important sides that you want to look at. And in the 5 things I learned video, the fantasy tip there was just around continuing to buy players over the last few weeks and going forward that suit your team and your buy planning, and trying to get as many games on the park across that period. And once round 13 is done, the Tigers and the Titans are two of those teams that are absolutely gold in that scenario. Again, not super relevant fantasy teams, but if you can find that diamond in the rough, whether it's Samuel Afinu, a Twali, a Fafita, there could be someone else, we don't know, both for more, right, in that edge as well. That doesn't mean you have 2 edges out in round 17, but that's something you can have a look at and see if that suits your side, if you have enough edges to cover in round 17, if you went both of them, for example, there. The next team on the list is the Dolphins, and as I said, they're a really good situation here, playing round 13, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20. So a lot of the really important rounds there, they missed 14 and 18. So how many do you want from this side? A lot of people are looking to potentially buy Aiken this week, and I think that he's a great purchase, obviously. I have him in my side. Plath, you might have him. Some still have Trey Fuller, but not everyone does. So these are a few of the options there. Connolly Lemuelu is coming into people's calculations there as an 80-minute edge, even though they keep naming him on the bench there. But yeah, there's definitely a few guys in people's thoughts from the Dolphins, or you currently have them. So this might be a situation where you look at your round 14 situation, and if you're looking to potentially hold a couple of these Origin guys, then maybe you can't hold too many Dolphins. And I'll have to work this out myself as to who I'm trading out in round 14. I currently have 5 guys out in round 14, so I need to at least remove one of them and then hope that my Origin guys back up. But if you have Nico Hines, he may not back up. Cotter, you'd imagine, would, if he gets through unscathed. And Harry Grant, you have a bunch of these guys that could definitely back up, and some may need to, or play lesser minutes. So you have to prepare your teams according to that. So that's where the Dolphins guys may not make it past round 13, or you find another way to do it, and maybe Crichton is the sell for you instead. So yeah, that's the Dolphins. But obviously, then they then play round 15, 16, 17, standalone round 18, 19, 20. So it's really this round 14 that you've got to try and get through. And I think that personally myself, I'll at least be holding a couple, and I'll decide if I hold Fuller, given he misses a few of those extras. But again, I'm going to have to see what happens with Hammer in Origin if he gets through unscathed, and then he's fine. Otherwise, Fuller becomes a really, really important player. So Dolphins, a very interesting team in round 14, but it gets so easy for them for the remainder of the season, with only round 18 being their final bye, and you go from there. For the Storm, they obviously have a bye in round 13, okay? But from there, it gets a lot easier. They would have knocked out 2 byes by that point, and then you just have to deal with round 19, which can be tough for sure. But if you're holding Grant, then he was going to miss round 19 anyway with Origin. Potentially you're holding a Blore, like myself. Maybe you've got Failonga, likely to be out of the side with Pat returning. Do you want to have a look at Pat upon return? Or do you wait a little bit longer for him and hopefully he gets through a bunch of games and you can decide from around 16 or potentially around 20 or something like that? Do you want to look at Eli Katoa? Because again, the Storm only have that bye in round 19. And if you feel like you can get through the edge situation in round 19, I think it's a little bit harder with Kaipis Paul out in 16 and things like that, with the Knights having their bye in 16 and then nothing until round 21 for them in that scenario. So maybe you can get through round 19 fairly okay, and that's where someone like Eli Katoa in the edge can come in. But again, if you're buying Fafita and then you're looking to buy Eli Katoa as well, how's that going to work for you and your planning? And that's where Crichton might be a good sell, because that's another edge that you may not need following, the round 14 buys list are very heavily edges, and we said both for more as well. So keep an eye out on Storm. Obviously, they help cover round 16, which is a pretty tough one. So, again, suit your thoughts around who to purchase after round 14, around your team situation and what you need for certain rounds. So, as I said, as you've seen with the videos, guys, map out your players in each position and see what they cover, what rounds they cover, and what you're missing out on, and what you may need to bring into your side in the following weeks. So, there's something to note. And obviously, everyone I've spoken about basically in recent from these teams has been either middles or they've been edges or both, right? With Samuel Afinu as being that dual position guy. So, how many edges are you going to need? That's the big question. And maybe someone like Hypebeast Paul could be a sell in round 16 for that reason, but he's also someone that can be important for round 19 and 20. So, you have to work out how many edges are going to fit your side. Sharks the next one on the list. So they have obviously good little 3-round play, and that's where a few of those guys are clear options for your sides. But which one of them are buys at this point? It's probably hard to say any of them, given a lot of them are at peak price or on the slide a little bit. Teague Wilton, Britton Nickera, again, edges that are on the slide. You've got Cam McInnes, who is in Origin, and Nico Hines is out as well. Atkinson you'd be holding, Braden Trindle you wouldn't be buying. So I think the Sharks are a fairly irrelevant side right now, and one I'd probably steer clear of. If you're already set for round 13 and 14, they're the kind of two important ones that Sharks play, because then they miss round 16 and round 20. So 2 more buys in that period in a section where players available in round 16 and round 19, 20 are going to be really important for you. And so Sharks probably aren't the team you want to target at this point of the season, in my opinion. For the Panthers, they've obviously had one out of the way. Same situation for them. They missed 16 and 19, and unless you have already own a few of these players, it's pretty hard to target multiple or even 1 or 2 from the Panthers at this stage. Again, if you're pretty well set for round 13, it's probably Sorensen or bust, mid and edge cover for the next few weeks. But again, missing round 16 and 19, do you just wait and you try and pick up a Fafita or something like that instead? If you want a centre, Isaac Tungo over the next couple of rounds is probably the only play you'd look at, and then Dylan Edwards is out for Origin. So there's not too many guys you want to look at in that Panthers side either. For the Bunnies, as I said, a fairly irrelevant fantasy team right now. I do think after round 13, Damien Cook could be a guy you look at. It looks like he's very much out of the Origin picture. Madge spoke about it was a hard decision between Robson and Appy, but Robson is playing both sides of the ball well, defending well, along with the attack, which is what I saw, with Appy missing a lot of tackles there. So for the Rabbitohs, I think it's Damien Cook in the hooking position, who plays all of them but round 17. And I think round 17 is an easier one to cover if you've got mixing in with Grant, or Reid Marnie or something like that, then that works really well for that round 17 buy for him there. And then Latrell Mitchell is the other one. If you can wait until round 13 is done, then Latrell Mitchell plays every single one of those games outside of round 17, which is really, really special. So keep an eye on Latrell in that wing fullback position. It's something that I'm finding tough for round 16, I think, and potentially 19 as well, with guys like Drinkwater out and these types of players. So definitely 16 with Armstrong and also Atkinson and these types of guys as well. So that's something to think about for your sides there. For the Rabbitohs, just a couple of those guys, Cook and Latrell. For the Doggies, they've got the Knights into the Eels, the next couple, which is a nice little run. By in round 15, they play 16, 17, 18. So it's still a team that you can definitely target. We've got the news of Bill Kickout out. I think that directly helps Jamin Salmon. Of course it does. And then Jacob Preston. So both those guys being the clear beneficiaries in the edge position. I think it does help Josh Curran a little bit, but it's something that you need to work out if you think that those minutes and the like are going to increase. If those, yes, his PPM was hectic last game, but there will be games where he doesn't score incredibly well in that 40-odd minutes, 50-odd minutes kind of situation. So keep an eye out on him and what your thoughts on him. Again, Preston, another edge, but he also plays some important matchups there. In 16, he plays 19 and the like there. So don't overexpose yourself to those edges, because that's probably the position right now that's come up with the majority of options in the last few weeks, that's for sure, and coming into this week. So Doggy's still a really, really good targeting team, just because you get that round 15, which shouldn't be too hard to get through. And then you might be selling a bunch of them in 19. But I think guys like Sam Hughes probably won't make it past round 15 in my team. He'll be moved on. I think we'll have enough cash in the bank to be able to upgrade them to really good players. And that's probably the big thing over the next bunch of weeks, guys, is that you've got a lot of our Origin guys are very expensive, and there's not a lot of expensive guys to trade them to. So you may have a decent amount of cash in the bank, and in that scenario, I would try not to bring in cheap guys until round 20. Maybe having 1, 2 max in terms of guys that play 1 or 2 games, and that's it, like the nuffs as we call them. I think 1 probably max at that point, but I don't think you'll need it as much unless all of the expensive guys come back and they're actually fit and not injured. And if that case, then you probably will need a cheapie. Outside of that, you'll be able to have a lot of guns that are like 700k rather than the 8-9 millions there. But you'll be looking to get guys like Isaiah Yeo and Payne Haas and these kind of guys following the buy rounds for sure in the Origin period. So that's that. That's an interesting one with the Dogs. For the Eels, an interesting team still, because they got these next 3 games. They missed 16, which you need to keep in mind if you are purchasing any of them. But then round 17, 18, 19, they're back and playing. And then round 20, you could probably sell a bunch of them. So Eels, still a very interesting team. There's not many interesting players in there, to be honest. Like, it's still Brown or bust, to be honest with you. So that's probably the only spot I'd be looking at. Kelma Tuolangi played some interesting minutes, but if Maddo is back, then that should change a little bit. Cartwright back playing 80 minutes. He might explode at some point, but another edge and probably not one I'm super interested in. For the Raiders in their side, you've got Dolphins in this one. Then they're buying round 14. But once, again, if you can get through that round 14 buy, maybe like Ethan Strange as a sell come round 14 for you. Weeks could probably, I think it's definitely a hold. He's making a lot of cash and scoring well. Outside of that, it's hard to hold many Raiders players outside of maybe Joe Tarpany, who's still been a little bit up and down as well. So Raiders, probably a team you want to look to move on in round 14 to get some of these guys I mentioned in the above buy sections. But again, Raiders will be done after that round 19, which is helpful for them. For the Dragons, another team where they have an interesting schedule, the same as the Eels. You can purchase them now if there were guys that were interesting to you. Probably Jacob Little is the main one at this stage, or Jack DeBellin. Jack DeBellin plays round 13, 14. He plays 17 and he also plays 19. So some really important rounds in there, which is cool. And I think this is the week to get him if you want to. Next week at latest, and then after that it wouldn't be worth it with their 2 buys later on there. For the Knights, I think it's hard to buy anyone outside of Armstrong from the Knights. Dylan Lucas I think is a really interesting one as well. Lucas plays all of the important games except for round 16. So if you can cover that, which it looks like we might be able to, that edge position, again another edge we're looking at buying with Fafita, with Beau Fermor and Eli Katoa. They all cover round 16 edges. That's cool. So if you did want to look at Dylan Lucas, you can do that there. But again, there's so many edges. Do you want to grab him now? Tougher matchups over the next 3. Dogs, I've got them in the red, but that's just because they got Storm and Panthers following that. In backing up week for Storm, but then a standalone Panthers one. So yeah, that's it for the Knights. Probably just Dylan Lucas and Armstrong that you might be looking at. Jaden Brayley as well if you want a hooker. I think this is a decent week to get him too. All right, the next 5 teams, have not had a buy yet at all. So proceed with caution. Obviously, Broncos, Eagles, and Warriors all have a buy in round 13 this coming up week. So you're not looking at purchasing them anyway. For the Broncos following that, I can't see any of them being a purchase until round 17 and beyond. But I think most of the guys you'd want in Broncos are going to be guys that are playing Origin currently. So you're waiting until round 20 or 21 anyway. I just can't see any of them being of interest for you at this point. So we'll leave them. I don't think you should be targeting them. Eagles, I really just think it's Garrick. Either next week in round 14 or it's round 15. He covers wing fullback and centre, which is a really obviously tough position. You could rotate him with Karaz, with Manu, with anyone like that. So he works really, really well. And I suggest that he's probably the only one you want to look to purchase in round 14. Has that round 17 buy and then has one in round 22, which you can easily get through with just Garrick being out. And he's a keeper for the entirety of the year. For the Wires, we've got a bye this week, obviously. Then it kind of opens up a little bit. Cowboys, Titans in amongst Storm and Broncos and Dogs. But then they have just that round 19 one. So they get you through round 16 as well. Not a lot of players you'd be looking at if it's edges again. Jackson Ford. I think SJ is a really interesting purchase in round 14. You got AFB, Torkel Harris, those kind of guys. If you need a mid, they can cover 16, 17, and 20 that aren't playing Origin. That obviously works really well also. And then they have the buy in round 27. So maybe you look to offload one of them or two of them anyway by that point, round 27, if you have any trades left, or a little bit earlier. But that's up to you. Obviously, they haven't had any yet, but after this week, they will have one knocked out of the way. Last two, guys, you got the Roosters there. They've got the Cows to kick things off in this first one. And then it's the bye in round 14. And then they've got 19 as well. And their third one is going to be in round 23. So a team that's very interesting for a lot of reasons. We're going to have Connor Watson back eventually. That's something to think about. You've got to work out what you're doing with Crichton, missing 13, 14, 16, backing up in 17, missing 19, backing up in 20. If he plays massive minutes, do they rest him a little bit with guys like Nat Butcher that can come in and play very easily? They've got Radley playing on edge now. They've got Siwa Wong. Too many edges, basically. So they could easily rest him in games. And he's obviously an easy straight swap for Fafita, but you need to work out if that is good for you and your plans or not. And therefore, Roosters, Manu, obviously the clear play. But I think Teddy would be the better play, given if he can cover round 14 with Teddy, then that works out great. It's an awesome purchase this week against the Cows. I think he'll dominate them. And then you've got Eels, Dogs, Tigers, Dragons inside of that. So at least for me, if I don't get to one of those guys this week in 13, they're going to be a terrific purchase for me in 15, because they're going to help cover 16 there with, Garrick's going to be a good one to bring in, as I said myself. But then guys like Teddy are going to really work out well. So maybe Garrick in round 14, yes, against the Panthers, but we just get him in early. Or I just wait till 15. We'll have to wait and see how that my situation works out. But we've got Teddy and we've got Manu that are going to be really good in that position for your team. And then the final one, the Cowboys. Not super excited about them. Again, if you're not buying any of them this week, it's Lukey's. If you don't have Drinkwater yet, I don't know if you go out and buy him right now. They're the kind of guys you want to look at and probably hold. All the rest, Cotter, you can decide on that one. With the Cowboys being flailing down the bottom half of the table, then Cotter's likely someone that will need to back up, but it'll probably be 40 odd minutes to 50, depending on the situation of the game. So he's an easy one you could sell as well, but also someone playing in round 14, which Crichton doesn't, and depending how that suits your team. I actually had a little bit of look at where I was at following round 13. Last year with trades, I was actually down to 11 after that. So I used a couple from 13 down to 11. And so if I don't trade this week, I would be two trades ahead of that point. And I do think a couple of rounds later, I had a look at after round 15 trades. And I think a few things happened across that weekend. And I had made 2 trades or something like that. And I ended up having to make 4, I think, in round 15, which made it really tough. And I was down to 6 after round 15. So for me right now with 13 trades, that's 7 trades away. And I hopefully and will likely be somehow in a better trade situation come those rounds than I was last year. We'll have to see what carnage there is across Origin, across this round 13, because that could change plans. But I think that's where the benefit of planning for round 13 to 20 comes from. I had to use a lot of trades early to try and catch up. And then I've set my team up in a way that I don't have to trade too much. Maybe it's 1 or 2 trades next week in 14, depending on what happens, to get a strong side. And then we work it out from there. But I'm planning ahead each and every round to get into a point where I didn't plan and I have to make the 4 trades. So I have some extras coming into round 20, and then I could trade pretty heavy across those few weeks and then save a bunch for injuries once my team's pretty set. So that's my thoughts there. Around that next sort of 4 rounds, guys, and around that entire period. I hope this one really helps you, and I think anyone who watches this is going to benefit greatly, and I think you'll be ahead of the game with your thoughts and your planning going into the next few weeks. So thanks so much for being here. I enjoyed making that one, and I hope you guys appreciated it too, and it really helps you out in doing well in the next couple of rounds of NRL Fantasy.